250 million years ago, the Earth was unrecognizable. No separate continents, just a massive chunk of land called Pangaea, that was surrounded by a huge and deadly superocean called Panthalassa, that nearly covered the entire planet. The climate was extreme, with vast deserts in the middle of the supercontinent and powerful monsoons along the coasts, harsh environments, unpredictable weather, and landscapes far different from anything we see today. But despite the intense weather and harsh conditions, this land wasn't empty, it was ruled by monsters. If you were walking through Pangaea 220 million years ago, there was one rule: never let your guard down. Because lurking in the heat, stalking the dry riverbeds and open plains, was one of the most fearsome predators of its time. This was POSTOSUCHUS, and if you saw it, you were already dead. It was a massive, tank-like killer stretching up to 20 feet long, about the size of a small car. It weighed nearly 950 pounds, with a body covered in thick, bony armor like some kind of prehistoric war machine. But in the brutal world of Pangaea, survival wasn't about being the fastest, it was about being unstoppable. And that's exactly what this next land predator was. Saurosuchus wasn't built for speed, it was built to dominate. At 23 feet long and weighing over 2,000 pounds, it was one of the largest predators of its time. Its entire body was wrapped in thick bony armor and resembled something like a walking fortress. But the creature that came before it didn't need armor. Its head was almost half its entire body, one giant bone-crushing skull on legs. This next beast wasn't built for defense. It was built to end things fast. Meet Erythrosuchus, a beast built for destruction. It wasn't the longest predator of its time, reaching around 15 feet and weighed upwards of 1,100 pounds. It was a big scary predator with one ridiculous feature: its head. Erythrosuchus was all about power and brute force, but what if speed was the real key to survival? Because in Pangaea, the killers weren't just big and armored. Some were lightning fast. Enter Liliensternus, a predator that didn't need to crush its prey, it just had to catch it first. It wasn't the biggest killer in Pangaea, but size doesn't matter when you're the fastest thing on two legs. But in Pangaea, land wasn't the only place where nightmares hunted, because in the swamps and rivers, something far older and just as deadly was waiting beneath the surface. Meet Smilosuchus, a giant predator that looked like a crocodile but was something even worse. Smilosuchus was a true river monster at 20 feet long and weighed up to 1,470 pounds. Smilosuchus ruled the rivers, striking from the water's edge. But what if there was a predator that had the stealth of a crocodile and the speed of a land hunter? That's where Carnifex carolinensis, otherwise known as the Carolina Butcher, comes in. And it lived up to that name long before dinosaurs took over. Carnifex was already perfecting the art of the kill. At 10 feet long and weighing around 1,200 pounds, it was a killing machine with raw, relentless speed, power, and aggression. Pangaea's land was a battlefield of claws, teeth, and speed. But the real monsters, they weren't on land at all. Beneath the waves of the vast Panthalassa ocean, a creature lurked that made even the largest land predators look small. Meet Shastasaurus, the largest marine reptile to ever exist. At first glance, Shastasaurus looks like a modern dolphin, sleek, streamlined, and built for speed. But this wasn't a dolphin, this was an ichthyosaur, and it was absolutely massive. Shastasaurus ruled the oceans with size and speed. But not everything in Panthalassa was a silent giant, because lurking in the shallows waiting to strike was something far more sinister. Meet Nothosaurus. Nothosaurus was deadly in the shallows, but deeper in the Panthalassa ocean, there was a predator that made everything else look like prey. If Nothosaurus was a silent stalker, this next beast was a brute force killing machine. Meet Leopleurodon. But deep in the waters of Panthalassa lurked a predator unlike anything else, a creature so bizarre, so nightmarish, that even today, it still leaves people scratching their heads. This was Helicoprion, a shark-like killer with a weapon no other animal has ever had. Instead of a normal set of shark teeth, Helicoprion's entire lower jaw was a spiraled saw blade, a whirl of razor-sharp teeth coiled like a circular saw, ready to shred through anything that got too close. Now you've seen the monsters of the deep and you've met the killers that stalked the land, but now we're going to look up, because in the skies above Pangaea, other monsters were hunting with a wingspan stretching over 26 feet. Tapayara looked like a hang glider with teeth. They say size matters, and it turns out there was an even bigger flying beast. Ornithochaerus was the Sky King, with a wingspan that reached nearly 30 feet. It glided above the oceans like a flying battleship. The skies were full of monsters, the oceans were even worse, and on land the apex predators of the Triassic ruled with tooth and claw. But then everything changed. Pangaea, the greatest landmass the Earth has ever seen, began to break apart. Continents drifted, climates shifted, old empires crumbled, and in the chaos, new giants rose. This wasn't just evolution, this was the dawn of the dinosaurs. When we talk about dinosaurs, we immediately imagine towering and thundering animals like Tyrannosaurus rex, but new research shows that the dinosaurs and their pterosaur relatives evolved from extremely small ancestors. Proof of this theory was discovered in Madagascar when a newly discovered reptile species was found named Konganafon kelly, or tiny bug slayer. It lived some 237 million years ago, and stood just 10 centimeters tall. During the Jurassic period, Earth's climate changed from hot and dry to a much more humid and subtropical climate. Forests of ferns, cycads and conifers began to cover the planet, and the air was warm, moist with tropical breezes. It was at this time that the dinosaurs began making their mark in a huge way. Literally small, quadrupedal plant-eating dinosaurs gradually evolved into multi-ton giants. But there were new predators that would come along that were as equally terrifying as the Allosaurus. The North American Tyrannosaurus rex could grow 12.5 m long and weighed up to 8 to 10 tons. Still, the T-Rex was a mean and nasty predator, if not downright unhygienic. Experts believe that shards of rotten bacterial-laden meat was constantly lodged in its closely packed teeth, which gave the animal a septic bite. But Tyrannosaurus rex, like Allosaurus, had problems with prey itself. It lived in the same region and time period as some armored plant-eating dinosaurs. One of the most iconic dinosaurs next to T-Rex has to be Triceratops. Ankylosaurus is another of the most famous armored dinosaurs. It was the largest ankylosaurid, and the last of its kind. Its tail ended in a club which provided protection from predators. Sauropods became even bigger by the late Cretaceous period. You may have thought that Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus were big, but by the time the late Cretaceous period rolled around, there was another dinosaur that existed, which could possibly be the biggest land animal that's ever walked the earth, Argentinosaurus. There are some dinosaurs that lived in the colder regions when they were further south and within the Antarctic Circle during the Cretaceous. It's now believed that all species of Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers to protect them from the elements. Everyone talks about how dramatically the dinosaurs went extinct, but judging by the whopping 165 million years they survived, they might just be the most successful vertebrate animals to ever exist on planet Earth. In fact, some dinosaur relatives are still around on the planet today. Modern-day birds are in fact descendants of feathered dinosaurs, and you might be surprised to learn that crocodiles are the closest living relatives to birds. As they shared a common ancestor, the two groups are the only known survivors of the archosaurs.